muscle structure. If we see human body, in this human body will be having first one skeletal muscle, then smooth muscle, then cardiac muscle. So these are the three types of the muscles we'll be having. What and all we are going to discuss, that's all about skeletal muscle in this chapter. Okay, skeletal muscle. So now we'll see skeletal muscle. So in this skeletal muscle, in human body, the skeletal muscle, it will be having, skeletal muscle will be having two structures. First one, muscle structure. First one muscle tissue will be having. Second one, connective tissue will be having in this skeletal muscle. This muscle tissue is nothing but the contractile tissue. Okay, this connective tissue is non contractile tissue. Skeletal muscle will be having two properties. First one, contractility and irritability. So what are these properties means? Contractility means if a muscle is there, so the muscle will be able to either go for shortening or lengthening. That is nothing but contractility. And irritability means muscle will respond to, suppose if this is our muscle will respond to external stimuli. What are those stimuli means? Maybe chemical or electrical and mechanical. So for this external stimuli, muscle will respond. That is nothing but irritability. So contractility, irritability are the properties of the skeletal muscle. Now we'll see the structure of the skeletal muscle. Suppose if we take one muscle, this muscle, it is the muscle belly. This is called muscle belly. So here the belly is composed of so many muscle fascicles. If we take one fascicle, in this fascicle we'll be having muscle fibers. So the outer layer which is covering the muscle fiber, is nothing but sarcolemma. That name is sarcolemma. So if we take this muscle fiber out here, so here in this muscle fiber we'll be having myofibrils. So inside this myofibrils we'll be having two structures, that is actin and myosin. So this actin is the thin filament, myosin is the thick filament. So this is the structure of the muscle. This is muscle belly. Muscle belly is composed of thousands of fasciculi. Inside the fasciculi we can see muscle fibers. Muscle fiber is the cell of the muscle. So inside this muscle fiber we will be having so many myofibrils. Will be there. So if we take myofibril out, so in this myofibril we will be having two structural things. First one is actin, it is the thin filament. Second one is myosin, this is the thick filament. This is the structure of the muscle tissue. This is the structure of the muscle. Okay, this is our muscle. Suppose if this is our muscle, if we do cross section of that muscle, how it will look means, suppose this is the cross section of the muscle. Inside the muscle will be having fasciculi. Here and here also. These are the muscle fasciculus. Will be having inside the muscle, and the outer layer of the muscle is called as epimysium. This is epimysium. And then here between these two fasciculi, between all these fasciculi will be having that layer name. Is called, between this fasciculi a layer will be there. That layer name is called perimysium. So this is the layer, and here we'll be having fasciculi. So inside this fasciculi, here will be having this is fasciculi. So the layer which we can see here, it is nothing but endomysium. So these are the layers of the muscle. Then we see the cross section area of the muscle: epimysium, perimysium, endo. This is epimysium, this is perimysium, this is endomysium. Okay, so now this is about actin and myosin. Actin is nothing but the thin filament. Actin is nothing but thin. This is thick. This is thick. Actin is thin structure. Myosin is thick structure. Suppose if we see muscle structure, in this muscle structure, first one will be having fascicles. First one will have fascicles. Inside the fascicles will be having muscle fiber. Inside the fascicle will be having muscle fiber. Inside the muscle fiber will be having myofilaments, myofibrils. Inside these fibrils will be having myofilaments. In these myofilaments will be having actin and myosin. These actin and myosins both are proteins. So that's why protein, we should take protein intake more to increase the size of the muscle, because actin, myosin are proteins only. Okay, now we'll come to actin. In this actin, it is a thin myofilament. It is going to formed by the two actin molecules. See here dots. It is going to formed by the two actin molecules which will wound each other. This is actin. This is actin thin filament. It is going to formed by the two wound actin molecules, and here we will be having a globular protein, a globular protein, that is called troponin. Troponin will be present over these areas, wherever these actin molecules will cross each other like this. So there we can see troponin. After that, this structure is called tropomyosin. Tropomyosin is going to cover the entire actin. It is going to cover the entire actin fiber. So that it is the actin is the thin filament. Okay, here we will be having chain-like structure, two chain-like structure actin. Then troponin will be there. Troponin, globular protein. Troponin will be there at the edges of the notches of this actin molecule. Then tropomyosin will cross over the actin molecule and take the structure. So this is about actin molecule. It's about thick filament myosin. So here this is the thick filament myosin. It is going to formed by the protein called myosin. Suppose if we take one muscle fiber, here we'll be having myofilaments, actin and myosin. Suppose if we take this is myosin, the thickness of the myosin is not same in the length. Suppose this is the length of myosin, for example, 10 centimeter. This is the length of myosin, 10 centimeter. The thickness of the myosin will not be same throughout the length. At the middle, the thickness will be more in this thick filament. So that here we can see the myosin filament here will be having globular enlargement over the myosin filament. These globular enlargements are going to helpful for the contraction of muscle. When sarcomere, when contraction of the muscle. So that's it. So thick filament is myosin. It is going to formed by the myosin. The thickness of the myosin will not be same entire the length. Center of the myosin, the thickness may vary. So here the globular protein is going to give these heads. So these heads are going to connect to the actin when the muscle is contracting. So this is about muscle structure. See muscle proteins. What and all we'll see proteins here. Actin is a protein and myosin is a protein. In this actin we'll see troponin will see, and tropomyosin. So these proteins will see in actin and myosin protein, and one more protein is there. The protein name is titin. What is this titin protein means function? When the muscle is contracting, the titin protein is going to keep or maintain the position of the thick filament in the muscle fiber. So that's the function. Titin is going to maintain the position of the myosin in the muscle tissue when the muscle is contracting. So this is about the proteins of the muscles.